We've all been to our fair share of industry conferences. And in a typical 2-day industry conference, on the second half of day 2, there are usually a bunch of sessions around driving change, change management, where all industry insiders, like all of us here, gather to talk about how users, the very people we are meant to serve, just don't get it. And how getting executive sponsorship, creating organizational mandates, increasing communication, making adoption as part of their KRAs are ways by which we can change user behavior and make users adopt the product or service they're evangelizing. Today, I plan to spare you from those cliches, not because they're wrong, but because they're overused and somewhat ineffective because of that. I will propose a few ideas on rethinking adoption, especially for AI initiatives. Let's get started. In the previous client advisory board discussion, sorry about that. Okay, in our previous client advisory board discussion in March 2021, I attempted to summarize the 20 odd years of being in this industry into 3 equations, which I believe drive AI advantage. How do we drive results at scale? It's not just AI, it's AI engineering and design, and it's AI into engineering squared into design squared, because that's really how we can solve problems and drive results at scale. Driving errors down within a problem involves better data, better compute, and better techniques. And they're all getting better. And there's a trade-off between how much of each you can have. But eventually, the multiplication of that results in error reduction. And finally, if you want to be a successful organization, an effective organization in driving AI, you need game-changing talent, a culture that invites and encourages experimentation, a positive error culture, and the governance to drive those results, including responsible AI. So this is what we discussed. And today, I want to double click on some of those in rethinking adoption. Let's start with this example of Google Glass, which was announced with a lot of fanfare in 2013, but was dropped and was abandoned in 2015. What went wrong? And what can we learn about adoption from this example? And what has Google done since that happened? The first thing is, I would say that the first issue that Google Glass had was around design, around the fact that the purpose of Google Glass wasn't very clear. It was a great technology looking to solve a problem, but the problem wasn't clear, right? More on this later, but that's one of the things that went wrong. Second is that the error rates in those times, for example, in 2013 to 2015, speech recognition, image recognition were all in their infancy. And therefore, even the error rates, it was not really that accurate or effective, which also was the second issue. The third issue was, there was several responsible AI issues with the technology Google had introduced, because people were taking pictures, videos without permission. It was creating a whole host of problems in various public places like restaurants and so on. So eventually, Google decided to drop that. But what can we learn from those experiences? And in the next few minutes, I'll try to unpack that and provide some answers. Let me first give you the example of our product called Cure.ai. We started building Cure.ai in 2016. And the first thing we really solved at scale was taking an X-ray and finding all the abnormalities in that X-ray. We realized that radiologists have a 23% error rate in finding everything that's there on an X-ray, all abnormal findings in an X-ray. They miss, for example, 19% of the lung nodules are missed. We knew that, and we created a solution by which you could take an X-ray and find out 30 different abnormalities in that X-ray, including things like pleural effusion or opacity, cavities, and so on. And here we were, thinking that we have solved the problem. Doctors should use it because now we have an automated report that tells you exactly what are those 30 abnormalities. And we were expecting that adoption to take off, but it did not. And we were thinking, we have solved the problem. we have really augmented a radiologist or a doctor into and helped him or her in finding out the abnormalities, and we have reduced the error rate. So why aren't people buying, or why aren't people adopting it? And then we struck upon something. The adoption started taking off as soon as we made this specific to tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a huge problem globally. India is a tuberculosis capital of the world, but across the developing world, tuberculosis is a huge killer, one of the largest killers in the world. And by understanding how people are trying to diagnose for TB, how people are screening migrant population for TB, we actually started to build a solution custom for TB. The technology was the same. We had exactly all the stuff that we wanted to do this. But what we had not done was to adapt or set it up for the TB use case. Once we cracked that problem, adoption just skyrocketed. It just took off. Secondly, we started working with AstraZeneca, and AstraZeneca said, we have an issue with lung cancer, because if lung cancer is not detected early enough, it creates huge issues. The cancer becomes much more lethal. But by looking at a chest X-ray and finding those lung nodules, we can actually detect lung cancer. So instead of looking at lung nodules, we said, can we detect for lung cancer and work with doctors in that workflow? In fact, we built a bunch of different workflow tools that helped us there. And the net result was that we really boosted adoption in a very big way. So what am I trying to convey here? I believe that all successful AI implementations use what I call a user-focused. So think of the doctors and how they're using it. In this case, the doctor or the radiologist is the user. Decision backwards. In other words, understand what you're solving for exactly. The TB is the use case. Diagnosing for TB is the use case. Understanding what a migrant population and understanding whether somebody who's migrating from, let's say, India to Dubai has TB or not is important for the immigration authorities in Dubai. So understanding that it is used for that purpose and working backward from the decision is useful. And framing it narrowly is also useful, because so far, while AI is making great strides in every possible area across a whole range of problems, the places where we have seen most success is when AI is framed very narrowly. The more broad AI is, the chances are we will have more issues. So once you have user-focused, decision backwards, narrowly framed approach, we have seen great success. And here the idea is to drive from data all the way to decisions. And in fact, start with the decision and drive decisions from data. And then in some cases, it will be about augmenting decisions. In some cases, it will be automating decisions. But find out that human-machine collaboration and build it user-focused, decision backwards, narrowly framed. That's the big insight for us. Now let's see what Google did with Google Glass. Google, in fact, abandoned the Google Glass consumer-grade product, but they did not abandon the Google Glass project altogether. So they built Google Enterprise Edition 2. And now this one is a much more purpose-built solution. It is user-focused, it is decision backwards, and it is more narrowly framed in industrial and manufacturing examples and healthcare examples, so that they can drive. A doctor need not make 3 or 4 hours of notes, but she or he can dictate notes to the glass. They can have a more meaningful conversation with the patient. And Google Glass is set up exactly to serve doctors and the patients where it is applicable. So great example of pivoting it into a more user-focused, decision backwards, more narrowly framed example. And that's what drove Google's success in Google Glass Enterprise Edition 2. Not just Google, even Microsoft, who launched HoloLens, actually has pivoted into, now it's HoloLens 2. And they recently sold a $22 billion project to the US Army. And the idea here is, it is not just HoloLens 2, but it's an integrated visual augmentation system for the Army. And while the glasses themselves cost only $5 billion, there's a $15 billion of Azure consumption, and other custom requirements of the US Army. So it is purpose-built, it is user backwards, it is narrowly framed, And that's how even Microsoft is driving the success of HoloLens 2. Now, predicting medication adherence. Let me give you an example of one of our failures in predicting medication adherence. In 2012, one of our most important healthcare clients, one of the largest healthcare providers in the US, asked us to predict medication adherence because, as you know, multiple people don't take their drugs on time, even though they want to take their drugs on time. So what happens? So we tried to build those models, and our first results were that our results were no better than just the naive hypothesis or the heuristic that people who don't take their drugs on time in the past will continue to do so. And we told our client that we don't have a great model, don't think it's worth implementing because it's too complex to implement. And what happened next was very interesting. In 2019, Amazon bought this company called PillPack, which took a very different approach. They reframed the problem. It was not important to predict medication adherence. It was important to improve medication adherence. So they said, why don't we just make it easy for you to take your drugs on time? So beautifully packed pills so that you can just open the pack, just pop the pills, right? Made the target behavior easy. Reason I'm coming to it is that organizations attempt to drive change in these unsuccessful ways. First, they come with these rules and mandates. Let's just mandate it for the whole organization. Very powerful, but unfortunately, it works only in very limited situations. And people protest once you cross that number of times you ask people to do something by mandate. Then comes the economic point. Let's make rewards and incentives. Let's penalize behavior, or let's put it in the KRA. People will do what is on their goal sheet. Unfortunately, that doesn't work either. Sometimes works, but often fails because people are not exactly goal driven as we expect them to be. Then comes, the most popular one, awareness and education. Send them to training. Let's do more training. Let's put more advertising, and people will learn. The more aware people are, they will act. Unfortunately, it doesn't work too. The most powerful one and the least used one is the behavioral approach. Can I really use behavioral sciences? Can I make it easy for the users to use what I'm trying to sell? The behavior change I'm expecting, can I shape the environment and not just trying to change users? Let's take a few examples. We looked at Mumbai trains. 10 people die every day trying to cross the railway tracks. And we thought this was about an awareness problem. Unfortunately, all awareness campaigns failed. The moment we succeeded was when we understood why people try to cross railway tracks, because they don't understand the speed of large moving objects. So the moment we built this yellow line solution, which gives you this visual reference of speed, number of accidents came down by 75%. Non-consciously, people were more scared of crossing the tracks because they could see the speed at which the train is coming because of the visual reference. In case of AIDS and HIV, people had great awareness of circumcision as a very important way to reduce the chances of contracting HIV. But then what they did not, they had this problem that, this is so painful. Like showing them a visual and giving them a reference for pain. What is the pain like for the whole process from VMMC for the first few days? We could actually improve it by 35%, the uptake. There was a lot of awareness, there was not enough action. We could improve action. So the real story here is that we all think of targeting the rider. The human brain is like a rider on an elephant. The rider is the new brain. The prefrontal cortex is the new brain. Very, very rational, very good, but unfortunately not very powerful. The elephant is the old brain, and we don't really address the elephant. We just address the rider. And shaping the environment actually addresses the rider. It addresses the elephant. Now coming to the next point here, I would like to say that as you try to change people's behavior, you can use multiple principles. One of those that Theranos used was to create this very impressive board of directors, right? And it drove adoption for them. Unfortunately, obviously for the wrong purpose, we all know that. But underlying this is a great principle, the principle of authority, right? When you have great authorities saying something is good, we like to follow. That's one example, but there are multiple social proof reciprocity. There are multiple principles of behavioral sciences we can use that drive adoption inside your organization. So I think using these principles in how we communicate can also drive adoption. Now, I've talked about how to design the first one. Now let's talk about how to drive error rates down. In Siri, when Siri came in 2011, it was a mess. the speech recognition was a mess because there were many, many errors. But as error rates came down, speech recognition just took off in a very, very big way. Right? It drove adoption. So in AI projects, especially, meeting human accuracy is very important. Once we frame it narrowly and bring great data and computer techniques, we can actually once we start to hit that human error rate, we start to see great adoption. And that's an example. What we did with SenseForth, one of the companies that we recently invested in, has a hugely successful implementation of speech and conversational AI. Very, very scaled. And one of the reasons is that from an error standpoint, on SQuAD 2.0, which is the gold standard for accuracy on conversational AI, it's number 6 on the leaderboard across the world. That error rate being better than human has driven great results. Now I'm beginning to come to the end of my section. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this example of Clever Hans. Clever Hans was a very intelligent, clever horse, which was trying to do some amazing tricks solving math problems. It turned out that it was basically learning the behavior of its trainer. It was just looking at the trainer, and once that New York Times said it is the most cleverest horse, most intelligent, it was about animal intelligence. It turned out that it was no intelligence, it was just mimicking the trainer's behavior. And the trainer also didn't know that he was sending those signals to the horse. Similarly, in many situations, we've seen that models learn a lot from data. In Cure.ai, we actually the first model we built actually learned from the notation on the X-rays. The X-ray notations basically indicated that the X-ray was complicated, or in other words, abnormal. It learned that behavior. It turned out that that's obviously not going to work in practice, so we had to change. So it's very important that we drive the error rates down, but it's also important that we do extensive validation. We have to build robust AI. That drives adoption as well. And one way to do that is to make AI more and more explainable. In this example, what we are showing is a bunch of X-rays and showing exactly what has the X-ray found. So now we know exactly where the issue is with the X-ray. And with that, we can actually detect and be sure that the X-ray, the AI is doing its job, make AI more explainable. And lastly, it's about, if you want to drive responsible AI, we need to have a framework for responsible AI that transcends morality, ethics, and legality. And this is the fractal responsible AI framework, which I believe every single organization needs to implement some form of responsible AI framework, because we are using AI more and more, and it's critical that we drive it through a responsible AI lens. Now, I would summarize that it is about, if you want to rethink adoption, it is about making it user backwards and narrowly focused, and it is about leveraging behavioral science and design principles. From an error standpoint, matching and exceeding human error rates, and finally designing it for robustness and fairness. Thank you.